Hey, what's up ladies and gents? In this video we're covering introverts. What's the furthest you've gone to avoid people? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. Put duct tape around the top and bottom of my dorm room door and taped over the peephole so no one could tell if my lights were on from inside the dorm. My roommate is very talkative. She'll talk at me for hours on end if I let her. Sometimes when I'm not in the mood for it, I'll hop in the car and drive until she goes to bed. LOL. I moved to Japan because you don't have to make small talk with strangers ever. Changed positions at work to a position where I make less money overall to avoid talking to guests. Friend's husband pulled a homer disappearing backwards into the hedge GIF move when he was trimming the hedge and people came to visit. Doubly awkward cause they saw him do it and he just stayed in the hedge. I was driving up to the store, saw someone I knew walk in. I didn't even stop, I just kept driving to another store. I didn't want to do small talk with them, and I knew it'd be a lot of small talk because something new just happened in their life that they'd bring up and want to talk about. I was having a bad day with being an introvert, so I used one of those grocery delivery services, and texted the driver saying wasn't home at the moment and to just leave the stuff on the porch. When I heard her drive up I literally stood in my hallway where I couldn't be seen from any windows and listened carefully. I heard her come up to the door, knock again, drop the bags and drive off. She sent a text that she had dropped the stuff off and I should hurry because some of it is perishable. I opened the door and got my groceries. That might be one of the lowest moments in my life. I still get pangs of shame whenever I think of it. If someone is browsing a section of a shelf at a grocery where I need something from, I pretend to look at other stuff until they go away. I swear though today I think I was waiting for someone to leave the canned soup section while they were waiting for me to leave the salsa section diagonally behind them. My grandfather has died like 15 times to get me out of social engagements. What a champ. I've scaled wet, steep and slippery rocks when hiking just to avoid small talk with the people on the actual path. 8th grade I continued to go to detention for weeks rather than turn in a school project. It kept me from having to wander the hallways alone at lunch. When I walk in the hallways alone before school, I would turn down a different hall if I saw a teacher coming towards me. It's not because I don't like them. I'm awkward when I'm only saying hello in passing. My roommates decided to have a random study party, with like 20 people in our apartment that is only 800 square feet. Because of the unexpected intrusion, I got into the router settings and throttled the internet to dial up era speeds. When my roommates were trying to figure out what was happening, I told them we simply had too many people splitting the bandwidth and in annoyance they all left for the library. Best 8 hours of silence ever. I sat in my car for a half hour in 90-something degree weather because I was too nervous to spend lunch in the work break room or sitting in a fast food joint. My car didn't have air conditioning. I volunteered for a position in another country where I don't speak the language so I could avoid conversations with my co-workers. I have been driving a mile to other gas stations for about a year now to avoid going to the 7/11 3 minutes away from my house walking distance because I don't want to make small talk with the cashier who works there. I would just chill in the bathroom during lunch all throughout like 8th grade. Some painters were in our apartment and my mom and brother were moving things around. I went inside the restroom because all I can think of is how do I avoid them. Learned German. Don't wanna talk to that random stranger who trying to sell you something. Say a few lines of German and they'll go away. I ate only a box of Nutri-Grain bars in my dorm room over the course of a week because I was too uncomfortable to go to the cafeteria when I first went to college. It's Saturday and my phone is on flight mode to avoid calls and text messages. The curtains are all drawn so it looks like I'm not home, and I'm going to watch movies all day. Sounds like my ideal day, really. I take all of my breaks at work in my locked car. I leave work Friday, go to the store for the next week's shopping, go home, and stay in my room until Monday. Bathroom is attached. Will get food from kitchen but only if my roommate is gone. Sometimes I shop out of town to prevent me from running into anyone I know. Amazon is amazing. Occasionally uses headphones without music just so people won't talk to me. I'm sure there's more things I've done, but those are basically daily things. I was invited to a low-key dinner thing at the local Chili's with a group of people I tangentially knew, like 20-ish people I guess. Ended up sitting at a booth by myself across the way from the main table because I didn't know anyone enough to really put up the effort in to sit next to them. That, and searing social anxiety. so I ended up being the odd man out. Very self-fulfilling in retrospect. I ordered an iced tea, got super anxious and self-hating about the situation and worked myself up pretty good. Had a bit of an agoraphobic, world closing in on me moment. Made the split-second and irreversible decision to bail out, and I left the only bill I had in my wallet on the table because I didn't want to have to wait another freaking second for the waitress to show up and pay for my circa $1.50 drink. That waitress got a $99.50 tip. In my defense, I was going through a pretty bad time in my life and my head had been telling me stories for months about how worthless and burdensome I was to be around. Typical depression/anxiety stuff that sounds absolutely bonkers when verbalized but is very real when you're living in a basement, working 60 hours a week at a job you despise with no hope of upward mobility. Along with a healthy amount of generalized self-sabotage to keep the cycle going. I've come a long way with that sort of thing. Still very much an introvert, but now it's a choice more than a self-inflicted curse. I dropped a class because a guy asked me out. Once I had 2 meetings scheduled at the same time. I called both, said I had to go to the other, and went to neither. Leave the office through the back door to avoid saying bye to people. I call it anti-stalking. I'll make a note of a person's routine, times, dates, locations, and use this information to intentionally avoid them, lest I have to have shudder small talk, or something. At my favorite local cafe, the barista greeted me by name and remembered my order. I stopped going there. I went down the elevator with a colleague. We used the same subway line to get home, and I knew if we walked down together we'd also have to sit on the train together and make small talk for the next 45 minutes. So at the building exit I said I had an errand to run, walked the opposite direction, and used a different subway line that added another 20 minutes to my commute. Worth it. We had a lot of cats in one of the houses I lived in when I was a kid. I think I was around 10. This was out in the country, with a single narrow road dividing a row of houses and a vast cornfield. We would get the very occasional solicitor. One particular time I do recall is when a couple modestly dressed older ladies with pamphlets were making their way down a row of houses, knocking on each door. Our door was an old wooden one with a rectangular window cut out at the top. I had seen them waddling across our yard. So I prepared myself. I grabbed the nearest cat and lifted it up to where its head was poking out the window. Knock knock knock. Held that cat up in the window as steadily as I could. Cat became wiggly, looking down at me and meowing while putting paws up on the glass and protesting whatever confusing thing was happening. Knock knock knock. Put cat 1 down and reloaded with cat 2. More wiggles, sniffs, confused paws, and meows. Knocking stopped. My reasoning was to make the ladies think we had some mutant cats with super long necks but regular-sized cat heads and paws. Maybe they would picture a tiny cat head attached to a serpentine body with pairs of paws all down their neck. Maybe they thought it was a large octopus or squid-like creature whose great body filled the entire house and on the end of each tentacle was a cat head and a couple paws. Perhaps the creature was created by a mad scientist whose lab was in the crawl space, and the only thing the creature could eat was old ladies and then used their pamphlets to pick their teeth afterward. So, instead of just avoiding the door, I guess I was weird enough to think I could scare them off so they wouldn't come back. I have no idea what happened on the other side of the door. I wonder what their perspective looked like, how convincing it was. As an introvert, I sometimes kinda just stop communicating and thinking for a few days. My wife understands, so she just tells me hello every time she sees me with a kiss. She just reads in the same room in case I need her. Social-wise, I locked my keys inside once when I was way younger to avoid going somewhere. This isn't that much of a story of how I went to great length to avoid someone, but it's quite a funny avoidance story. So a few months ago, I wanted to get a job. I'm 16, so some money of my own would be nice. So I walked about 2 miles to my local visitor center. I live in the middle of nowhere. To see if they had any jobs going. I went in, got too scared to talk to the person at reception, then walked the whole 2 miles back home. Hid in my room for house and only left once the other people had left. Gone to the grocery store at 1 AM so that I didn't have to talk to anyone. Now these are me in extreme states. Although I'm introverted, I'm also pretty social. Sometimes I just go through phases where I just want to hide from the world. Going to a gym at 2 AM, seeing that there's one person inside, and waiting in the parking lot until he leaves. So I was supposed to go to a female friend's house for the first time, who's actually very close to me. But since my parents are very conservative, I told them I'm going for a movie with my friends and the tickets are already booked, so they can't say no. Next day when I'm supposed to go, I get super anxious thinking it'd be awkward, cancel on her, but still had to go out because of the movie. Now I'm out with no one to go to or nowhere to go with very minimal cash for around 4 hours. That day sucked. Erased people's names from my phone so that when they call all I see is an unknown number, and since it's an unknown number I don't have to answer it. I've left parties/hangouts where drugs or alcohol are involved. I mention it because it plays a key role in my excuse, and just say I went home to pass out or throw up. Really, I just wanted to go spend alone time on the internet or playing League. I like seeing people, but I can't socialize with a big group 4 hours on end, exhausted after 30 minutes or so. My sophomore lockers in high school were down a set of stairs, which were pretty awful and a general death zone. I had gone down to get something from my locker, and when I went back, I heard voices and I paused. I turned the other way and walked up the massive, steep hill on the side of the school to avoid anyone seeing me. It was winter and snowing too. I gave birth to my baby at home, alone, with my toddler watching. I unexpectedly went into labor, and even when I could feel the baby's head, I just thought to call my husband and tell him to please hurry. The thought of having to call an ambulance and deal with people was too much. I recently went on holiday to Bali, and quite a few people I knew were going over at the same time, staying not far from me. The usual promises of we'll catch up when we get over there. I knew that catching up with them would involve drinking silly amounts of alcohol and just talking shit, so I faked that I had gone to another region of the island instead on a whim. And just had to be careful if I ventured out that I didn't go to places they were likely to be. Please subscribe if you like the video. It really helps the channel to grow. Adios.